and the rest of our choir and our music ministry. As you know, I want to talk about connection and how we get to witness each other. And as I'm sitting there just witnessing our music ministry, right? It's more than the words that they sing, it's the energy they embody. And if there's ever a need for us to remember the power of when we are vulnerable enough to be seen and vulnerable enough to feel and sense the power that is within us and the many different ways in which that power expresses, and with them it was in their energy and in the voices and in the feeling of it, just how powerful it is, right? And how it invites us in and it reminds us of that which is within us. I even thought I could sing after that, right? But you know, that is the beauty also of community, right? So what did the Unity congregant say to me when I asked them if they were going to go to the march later this afternoon? Nah, I'm gonna stay here. I literally practiced how to say namaste so you would kind of get it, but more work in progress. Listen, I really hope to see you at the march. It's the second annual We Are United March, and it really is symbolic of recognizing that we are stronger together. We are stronger as individuals, and we are stronger as a community when we all come together, and that is with very diverse ways of showing up in the world. The more that we are looking for how we can connect and be with each other, the more that can be birthed through that experience. And I really, you know, in the midst, although it's the second annual and it was already scheduled, you know, part of the conversation has been like in the midst of the Islamophobia that has shown up, you know, more strongly in the world, the anti-Semitism, the clashing of individuals, people even feeling like they can't share where their opinions or where they stand on things that are going on in the world. This is a really powerful experience and one that we can have together. And I believe that the consciousness of unity is very much part of the power that can come from this kind of march and this kind of coming together. And so if you are interested, we're going to meet here in the parking lot at 2:30 and take the Metro Rail over to where it starts, which is the Freedom Tower. You can still sign up online if you want to just get all this information sent to you via email. And it's really interesting because it starts at the Freedom Tower, and we march over to the Underline in Brickell. And because I'm a minister and I'm getting into all the metaphysics and the symbology of things, right? Like I'm really sitting with it, right? The amazing part of like starting at the Freedom Tower and think about who we are, how we get to show up when we really step into the freedom, when we undo the bounds of anger and angst and disharmony and dehumanization and contempt and self-righteousness, right? Like the kind of path that we can walk in that freedom. And you go to the Underline, and for those of you who have been in Miami long enough, you know that the Underline are these beautiful green spaces and parks and places of gathering now where it was desolate. It was right underneath the Metro Rail, right? How many of you remember trying not to look at what was going on under the Metro Rail? And so it just reminds me when we step into that freedom, when we come together, when we walk this path together, like where there has been disease, where there has been barren land, through our freedom, we are able to revitalize it. We're able to bring new life into it. So if you're as symbolic and try to make meaning as much as I do in things, I invite you to come. I simply just would love to have you be a part of it. So go to our website or ask me a little bit more about it, really so that we can get to the place of knowing and remembering that united is the way in which we move forward. And freedom is really allowing ourselves to move beyond the judgments, the limitations, the visions that we can sometimes like allow, right? Of the other, of the challenges and the difficulties and the situations that are going in our life. Martha Smock, who many of you know is one of my favorite Unity Classic teachers and ministers, says, freedom is yours, but you must realize it and claim it. There is nothing that can limit or bind you, for in truth, in spirit, you are free, unfettered, and unbound. And we have been talking about how to move deeper into the freedom that is within and the freedom that we can live into. And the question for me is, one, how can we dismantle everything that has kept us limited and bound and not fully realizing the power within our freedom? And then the other question is, like, what are we going to do with that freedom? What are we going to do from that place? And for me, it's like, we're going to continue the journey of life. We're going to continue to go into the different experiences, the different things that are out there for us, and we're going to do it from a deepened consciousness. We're going to do it from a different place than maybe we would have when we thought of ourselves as limited, when we thought of ourselves as separate from God and with each other. Now, it is the closing of our SpiritGroups program. We were on this 7-week journey with Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. And through this time and the series that we had on Sundays, we were looking at things like how to welcome the unexpected with curiosity and with awe. We looked at how to live deeper into joy and the use of gratitude as a practice to move us into that. What it would be like to just let ourselves grieve and feel some of the things that sometimes just come up and that we've sort of called the shadow or pushed them to the side. We've talked about love, connection, community, and the power that is within it. And so the question is, now what? Now what? Now that we've heard about these things, now that we've experienced it, now that we have been in our small groups and had these discussions, what do we do with what was birthed within us in those spaces? And it reminds me of that Zen Buddhist saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Heard that before? And what do we do after enlightenment? Chop wood and carry water. And so we move into life just like we were doing, but we do it from a different place, and we allow that which is the wisdom that has been birthed in us to then be what directs us, not necessarily in going left or right, but just how we show up in the journey itself. For me, I love that we can move through this journey with a deepened understanding of the fact that the journey itself is the miracle. The journey itself is the teaching, and the journey itself is the way in which we get to express ourselves in ways that we didn't think were possible. And for me, part of our journey and part of this life and the beauty of this life lies in our connection, lies in being able to step into community and communion with each other and the togetherness that we feel. Many of you know one of my favorite, or the favorite, I'm going to say right here and right now, it is my favorite verse of the Bible. It's Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, and it says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them." Because it reminds me that God is in our connections. God is in our relationships. And how I can understand God becomes more clear the clearer I am of the sacredness and how holy our relationships and our connections are. Brené Brown, in a different book, The Gifts of Imperfection, says, "We are inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us. Our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and compassion. It brings meaning and purpose to our lives." You weren't supposed to hear that. That was my little lesson, because as I was doing that, I was like, oh, remember when Marco Rubio drank water during the thing? And I'm like, and then, oh. Okay. All right. Present, aware, in this moment. All right. So how are we going to live into the connection? Lessons abound. All right. So in the last pages of Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown really invites us to look at life. The way that I understand what she's sharing is to look at life as the opportunity for even greater, more conscious connections. She calls it cultivating meaningful connection. She says that in order to do that, there's 3 pieces that we really have to start embodying. The first one is grounded confidence in who we are, what we are, in the truth of our being. The second thing is we gotta practice, with confidence, walking the path together and walking alongside others, regardless of their experience, regardless of anything that in the past may have kept us feeling separate or divided. And the third part is the story stewardship, which is really about the experiences that we get to speak and to share with each other about our own life's journey and what it's meant for us. And so first is, that grounded confidence. And the grounded confidence is really, for me, about allowing myself to trust and be faith-filled and recognize that in the power of grace that moves through and as my life, that Christ nature is within me. That how I define myself through the eyes of God is as holy, as sacred, as whole. And to really have confidence in that, right? Because, I would imagine that many of us have had different experiences when we've said, affirm that you are the power of God. I mean, maybe you remember one of the first times that you came and spoke the prayer for protection, especially the new one, where it's like, the light of God surrounds us. And then we are light? And sometimes we speak those affirmations, maybe sometimes timidly, right? And the invitation is, how can we say it? How can we actually not even say it, not even speak it? How can we feel ourselves confident in those affirmations and in the truth that those affirmations sort of invite us into? To realize that there have been times where, because of our lack of confidence, because we feel like we've lacked something, we weren't good enough, we've armored up, right? And sometimes we didn't even realize when we were doing it, but guess what, everyone? We're wiser now, right? We know better. We know how that has shown up for us. And we recognize that in our attempts to armor up, what we're really doing is creating a wall that would separate me, the true me, from the true you. And in our desire to defend ourselves, right? Or to feel a little bit more safety, because it just didn't feel safe to acknowledge that we are light, to acknowledge that we are loved. Because, if you go to the supermarket and we are light, what would happen then? Try it out. Let's see, right? But seriously, actually, when I say that, it's like the first thought is oh my God, I'm going to be ridiculed, right? But if somebody were to go to the supermarket and you were standing right there next to them and they said, we are light, as Unity folks, what would you say? Darn right, right? But we go to I'm going to be made fun of, they're going to think that of me and blah, blah, blah. Right, so to really be confident about who we are, Temple Hayes, a Unity minister, says, imagine if you put all your energy into being who you are rather than who you are not. And there is this energy that we have that is the capacity that we have to be able to live into our dreams, to be able to create a life that feels like we're thriving rather than just surviving. And so where are we putting our energy, and how can we look at where we are putting it and start to really harness that energy for the kind of life, the kind of experience, the kind of embodiment that is really being called forth from us. Yes, we have been hurt. Yes, we have been taught to conform, many of us. Yes, we have been made to feel uncomfortable in our truth, and we're starting to know better. And we know what's possible when we move through those things. And so we can be confident about who we are, so that when somebody says, well, who are you? I am the living expression of the Christ. I am light come into the world. I am power. And the power that I am is a power that is within me and nobody can ever take away. And can you say all those things? Can I say all those things with humility? Right? With humility. Because Brene Brown says that that's a really important part of it, and humility really is just the ability to, she defines it as openness to new learning combined with a balanced and accurate assessment of our contributions, including our strengths, our imperfections, and the opportunities for growth. To know our power, to know that our Christ nature, and to know, as I read those imperfections, right, and as a good Unity person, I'm like, we're all perfect. And we sometimes miss the mark. And sometimes we just make a mistake. And can we acknowledge that we've missed the mark, that we have made mistakes, that other people have missed the mark, and other people may have made mistakes? And that doesn't mean that there should be any guilt or shame, but rather just a learning. Being open enough to see those things as the teaching to remind us the truth of who we are, to remember to be open to that openness of learning, right, from those experiences. And she shares that journey of life is not about being right, but to get it right. To get it right. Whether you think it's through one life or multiple, to just try to get it right. Get the way in which we are meant to flow in life and who we are, and allow that to flow through us. And when we can really trust and have faith in that, and by the way, sometimes that's trusting and having faith in our own power, and sometimes that's having faith and trust that God's power will bring us to the place of remembering our power. Whatever gets you to the place of knowing who and what you are. Then, once we are confident in that and we really own that space within us, it's like, well, what are you going to do with that? And she invites us to really walk the path with others, to walk amongst others, alongside others. And that really is an invitation to have compassion and empathy for those that are in our experience, whether we like them or not, right? To have compassion and empathy for ourselves, and to have compassion and empathy for others. Have compassion and empathy for the victims of war and violence. And as hard as it is to have compassion and empathy for those that perpetrate war and that violence, for, like in this idea that we're divided, in this idea that we're separate from God, we've all lived into the systems that have been taught to us about us versus them. And that our safety lies in being more powerful, stronger than somebody else. And so can we walk alongside others with the courage to have an open heart in all of the relationships, even when they don't feel. Let me tell you, I'm like, we are United March, and I was seeing some stuff on the news, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to something that says we are united right now, because I'm really feeling the division. I'm really sensing it within me. And it is specifically because of that I have to go to that march. And Psalm 133 verse 1, it talks about the power that is within unity on the bay, I might add, the blessedness of unity. And it says, how very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. When we walk with each other, to really walk with each other is to also be good stewards of each other's stories. Because stories are stories about life, are stories about our experiences. They are our lives. And so how can we honor them, and how can we trust that not only will others honor our experience, but that something within us can honor and hold sacred the experience of other people. Not as the reality of who they are maybe sometimes, but just their stories, their perceptions, and the journey that each of us, they and us, are taking towards remembering our truth and remember our connection. Paula D'Arcy says, God comes to us disguised as our life. God comes to us disguised as our lives. And so if I believe that God is in my life, then God is in everyone's life. And the opportunity to listen to their stories and their experiences and hold that as sacred is me acknowledging that I can witness God through their sharing. I can witness God through their beingness. And that God itself is bringing up some things for me to recognize more fully the truth of all humanity and the truth of all of us as the one presence of God. Now, all of these are practices, right? And we are invited not only to continue the practices, but to really embody these practices. Because the more that we practice and practice and practice, the more habits that we create for ourselves. And the more that they become a habit, the easier it is to remember when we are veering off the road and when we are in the flow, right? And we're always practicing. Whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, whether we know what we're practicing or not, we are always practicing something. And the question is, what are we practicing? And is it working for us? Is it bringing us to a closeness with God and each other, or is it keeping us apart? Is it bringing me into a greater understanding of the wholeness and abundance and prosperity that is not only mine, but is for everyone? Or is it keeping me from truly living the life that I'm meant to live? And is it keeping me from moving into the space of thriving in love, thriving in abundance, thriving in wholeness, thriving in understanding, thriving in everything that we know God to be? I look out into the world, and I do see violence, I do see discord, I do see perceived separation, but I see more than that. I see victimization, but I see more than that, because, again, even in the things that don't feel comfortable and call for us to take action, because this is not about not taking action, it's about recognizing what is the consciousness by which we are taking action. And so when I see all those things, I like to believe that what I'm also seeing is simply the evolution of us into who we are, the emergence of God as our life and in the life of humanity. And, it reminds me of, I'm sure you've had this kind of experience before, right? Where as we are moving on the road of life, on the journey of life, how many of you like to take shortcuts? How many of you have done something similar to what I've done, which is you're driving north on I-95 to a place you've gone a bunch of different times, and you're like, this shouldn't take me 4 hours. I bet there's a way to take a shortcut and get there in 3 hours and 45 minutes. And you see a little road on your GPS, and your GPS is telling you, don't go that way, but it's a little road, and it looks a little closer, and you love shortcuts. We love shortcuts sometimes, don't we? And all of a sudden, we take the shortcut, and all of a sudden you realize, I was in a paved road. It was really easy to flow in that road. I took a shortcut, and all of a sudden, bumpy road, dirt road, a bunch of rocks, and all of a sudden you have to go much slower, right? And so all of a sudden you realize, I veered, and now this is going to take me a little longer. The lesson is going to maybe take a little longer. And how many of you have been on that bumpy road and thought to yourself, I should just turn back. But I've already given 15 minutes of my time to this bumpy road, so I should see it through. And as bumpy as it is, you get comfortable with being so uncomfortable in that bumpy road, and that you're going in that direction that although you know and are feeling the guidance to turn back around, you say, I'll give it another 15 minutes. And 30 minutes later is when you finally say to yourself, you know what? I've learned my lesson. It'll take me a little longer, but I'm going to go back on the smooth road that allows me to flow with life and flow with God. Ever been there? Yeah, me too. And see, the thing is, it's not just about flowing with life and flowing in that journey. It's really about acknowledging that journey is actually happening within us, right? It's not the streets that we went through in the past. It's not the streets that we're going to get to go through in the future. It's what is the journey that is taking place within us. Meher Baba, who's the one that coined Don't Worry, Be Happy that I shared with you about last week, says, in the spiritual life, it is not necessary to have a complete map of the path in order to begin traveling. The deeper secrets of spiritual life are unraveled to those who take risks and who make bold experiments with it. Those who speculate from the shore about the ocean shall know only its surface, but those who would know the depths of the ocean must be willing to plunge into it. How many of us have said that we are willing to plunge into God, into love, into light, into unity, into harmony, without knowing how it's going to look, right? But we can plunge into it. It's really that inner journey of being okay with plunging and just trusting and having faith that God and the power that is within will guide us. Adyashanti also says it is important for us to realize that we must not only have the courage to recognize the divinity within ourselves, but also to embody it and manifest it in the way that we live. How are we living with each other? How are we living through the challenges and difficulties that we see on the TV and that we experience in our own lives? How are we journeying and allowing ourselves to spiritually evolve moment by moment, experience by experience, being willing to check in with who I am, what I am, and the journey of allowing it to express more fully into the world? We are the spiritual image and the likeness of God. And so that comes, yes, with a lot of privilege, but it also comes with responsibility. And then it also comes with a calling for us to live into our own destiny, to walk this path, and I believe to walk this path together. And when we do, the places that we can go, beyond anything that we could have imagined, beyond the limitations that we set for ourselves or we thought we allowed others to set for us, the places we will go. I want to read from one of the most enlightened books I've ever gotten a chance to read, The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Congratulations. I do this sometimes for christenings too. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where to go. Check in with spirit, right? You'll look up and down streets, look over with care, and about some you'll say, I don't choose to go there. Divine wisdom at work. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not-so-good street. Out there, things can happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsy and loving as you. And when things start to happen, don't worry, don't stew. Just go right along. You'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll go, and you will succeed. Yes, you will, indeed, 98.75% guaranteed. Now, when we know that life is the spiritual journey of evolution, that goes up to 100% guaranteed. Unity, you'll move mountains. So, be your name Boxham or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Ali, Van Allen O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. Who is ready for the journey of life? Who is committed to experiencing their journey from the place of good? If you are committed to the journey of God as your life, I'm going to ask you to stand up. If you are committed to the togetherness that we can feel when we remember that we and God, and through that oneness, we are one with each other, I'm going to ask you to get up. If you are committed to knowing your connection to God and others is the safety that we have and is the power that we share, I think everyone is standing up. And so that we can not only witness the power of the beauty that is within us, but that we can also dance and sing along with it. Hit it. Thank you so much for visiting our YouTube channel. We post new videos every week to keep you positive, present, and inspired to your divinity. Please click on the subscribe button below and also that notification bell. Remember to share this with your friends and your family, those that you know will be inspired just like you have been. And always remember that we love you, that we bless you, that we behold the Christ in you, and we see you doing great things. Thanks and take care.